Well, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Janice Law. I'm the founder of American Women Writers National Museum. And everybody put on your shades. Those of you, Christian, our Emmy Award-winning videographer, is going to do the room. So everybody who's got shades, put on your shades.
Except that they don't fancy as well.
We're going to pan the room. There you are. Where are the shades? Cool Hollywood, you know, we have the cool. Ah, great. Just stop panning the room.
Gotcha.
Because everybody got their shades, put on your shades. Okay. I know I have to take mine off now. Christian, you wore your shades too, didn't you?
I did.
Okay. You can do a selfie. You can do a selfie. Anyway, my name is Janice Law. I'm the founder of the American Women Writers National Museum. Welcome, everybody. Today, we're coming. We appreciate you coming. The American Women Writers National Museum is in its third year, and our mission is to honor American women writers, contemporary and historical. So every month we have a luncheon in the press club, which gives us this room for free, which is very, very nice. We're always grateful to them. I'm a member of the press club. Any of you would like to join the press club, you can consider doing that. You can get applications downstairs at the desk. It's really a great organization. Some people say, well, it says American Women Writers National Museum. Where are your things to look at? Well, when I started the museum, I did not start with bricks and mortar. A lot of people who start organizations start with trying to get bricks and mortar and raise money for that. But I didn't. I guess women have a different take, a more practical take. I decided to first get programs and get well known, and then as we get in our third year, we're eligible for grants after that, after 3 years, and then apply for grants and try and get a building. So that's why we have things, but they're in storage. And in fact, Larry Guthrie, Larry, are you here? Right, there you are. Ah, shades. Hey, Larry. Cool. Larry Guthrie is on our board of directors, and he's starting an online library. So he's going to have an online library of women writers. He's going to put that together. If anybody wants to join the museum, memberships are $1. And Autumn does treat for lunch, but if anybody wants to make a contribution for the lunch, of course, we would appreciate that, but it's not required. So this morning we're going to have the topic of screenwriters. Autumn honors genres. We've honored screenwriters, playwrights, we honored librettists, some of them who wrote for the Metropolitan Opera. We honored categories of women writers, but we never yet honored screenwriters. So we're very happy, and we partnered with an organization called Women in Film and Video, WIFV, and I understand there are a lot of members of that organization here. And I'm going to ask the executive director to say a few words about the organization, and then we're going to zoom right into our topic, because a lot of people come on their lunch hour, so we honor that. We try to finish right around 1 o'clock. If you have individual questions you'd like to ask the screenwriters about your project, your individual interests, very graciously agreed to stay afterwards for a while, and so you can feel free to approach them and ask them any individual questions. So right now, is there anyone here from any organization, any writing organization? I try to introduce those people. Yes, ma'am.
The National League of American Pen Women.
Okay, National League of American Pen Women. And I understand Ms. Lightby is also from that organization, right?
Light,
okay. Light is from that organization as well. So welcome. And,
The Society of Women Geographers.
Hi.
The Society of Women Geographers.
Yes, we have geographers
Elizabeth,
that term very broadly.
You look great in your shades. You look great in the shades. Stand up for a second so we can see your shades. I know you're very well known.
It's the wraparound look.
I use them in the pool. That's why they're wrapped around. And they're Iron Man. That's the name. $19 at Rite Aid.
All right. So now I'm going to introduce the executive director of Women in Film and Video, and she's going to tell you just for a few minutes a little bit about her organization. Then we'll start with them.
Hi, I'm Melissa Houghton with Women in Film and Video, and I want to clarify, it's not my organization, it's actually your organization. So it's, as we want to stress, it's Women in Film and Video. So we love working with people who have stories to tell. We love working in Washington, D.C. instead of New York or LA because we have interesting stories to tell. And we have original stories to tell. And we really work to assist people with our connections, resources, and advocacy on the behalf of the stories they want to tell. So I have the distinct pleasure of getting to work with documentary producers, animators, feature producers, short producers, and oh my God, what is that you've just done, producers? It's a real treat. We have close to 1,000 members in the tri-region area, because of course we're not the state, nor do we have representation in Congress, so we're not getting earmarks for the work we're doing. But we do need a Minister of Culture in the United States. Interesting. We are thrilled to be here this afternoon and to bring some of our resources in terms of the screenwriters who are going to speak with you today. For a place where nobody thinks any original ideas come from, you're going to meet 4 women who have a lot of original ideas, and not just for their own work, but really in working with other people and empowering them to get their stories told. So among the programs we offer across the year, and we offer close to 70 programs a year, and they're for talent. We have a talent roundtable, we have an animators roundtable, we have a documentary roundtable, we have a writers roundtable, we have an audio roundtable, and then we do general programming working with all of the organizations that we can in the area. But 2 programs coming up are our annual Script DC conference, which is actually a writing, producing, and directing conference. We know a lot of the stories that are coming out of here, while someone else should produce them, they're not going to. And if those stories are going to be told, what are the skills you need to bring your story to a screen? So we're delighted. Monica will be speaking at that conference. Jane is organizing that conference. Hopefully Sabrina will be at the conference. We also have some leading producers coming from New York and LA who really take interesting stories and bring them to national audiences. Mary Jane Skalsky is coming. Golan Ramos is coming. Hope to be announced that you're really big on theme next week. Joan Darling is coming to do a special workshop masterclass on directing the work. It was a huge hit last year, and we're thrilled that she's coming back. The other program that I think Monica's going to talk about a little bit is a spotlight on screenwriters, and Monica has been just so critically important in making that happen, from a germ of an idea to, oh, it's at least a toddler at this point. I'd say it's close to high school. Yeah, it's a definite adolescent. So she'll be talking about that. We will all be here later for questions, and it's such a great panel. I'm so happy.
Okay, I'm going to briefly introduce our panelists, and then I'm going to ask them to tell us something about their background, how they got started in screenwriting, and they'll just combine their answers to that. Then we'll go around again and ask them about their current projects. Go around again. And then I have a couple questions that I borrowed from the National Book Festival. I had a panel on screenwriting, so I took a couple of the questions that were asked there. Come on in. I think there's some seats maybe on the side or back here or somewhere. So I'm going to start with Monica Lee Bellais. I see we have a lot of our French or Acadian type names here. And Monica worked in production at James Cameron's Lightstorm Entertainment, DreamWorks, Warner Brothers Records, Smithsonian Networks, Discovery Communications, Public Broadcasting Service, and Teleproductions International. She's a member of the Screen Actors Guild, the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, and Bellais worked with the DC Office of Motion Picture and Television Development and the Motion Picture Association of America. Jane, is it Barbara? Barbara, the next lady with the pearls. And she studied theater management with famous Rudolph Bing, who's now retired, but he's the legendary. Yes,
Very retired.
yes. The legendary manager of the Metropolitan Opera in New York. And we had our women librettists here, one of the women, yes, worked in the Metropolitan. Barbara has completed 5 screenplays and recently co-produced her first short feature. Helen, you take my turn. And recently co-produced her first short feature, based on her screenplay, Suspicious Densities, Working with Wonder Pictures. She's a graduate of the Parsons School of Design. Sociologist Dr. Sabrina McCormick. She's the lady in the sort of chartreuse, the lady in the black. The lady in the black jacket. And she is the producer of an Emmy-nominated film on climate change, which was aired as a Showtime series. She holds a PhD from Brown University and serves as a professor at the George Washington University School of Public Health. Maureen Sappey, who is the lady in the chartreuse sweater, has worked in several genres, including film, and her novel Letters from Bonnie is being made into a documentary and miniseries. And I understand she's been promoted or designated kind of a producer with that, or working with that. She'll tell us more about that later. Every month, Autumn honors, it's called the 50 State Project. We honor women writers from 50 states. We do it in groups of 4. We present their work, the premier women writers from states in America. And if you want to look at our website, www.AmericanWomenWritersNationalMuseum.com, each state has women from that state reciting excerpts from the writing of the great legendary women from that state. So this month we're honoring women from Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Minnesota. I have to stop a minute and introduce someone who just came in. This is my friend, Helen Hester Osa.
I have to do this one.
Oh, she has her shades, okay?
Wow.
Stand up, Miss Helen, you have to stand up. And Helen, oh great, there's Helen, Okay, good.
Go girl.
Have a seat, please. Helen is one of the executives in the U.S. Copyright Office. Helen, what is your title there?
I'm head of publications.
She's head of publications for the United States Office of Copyright. So those of you who have questions about copyrighting your work, you have an added benefit. Afterwards, you can ask Ms. Helen anything you want about copyright. She's an expert. I must say, about all women have been very supportive of the museum. There are about 4 or 5 women who really have supported us over the years, and one of them is Helen. So I take this opportunity to thank her profusely. So we'll start out with Monica, and tell us how you got started, and we'll go forward. Thank you.
I'm Monica Bellais, and I got started actually in the music industry. I grew up in California, so I think I've seen all of entertainment. Started writing really when I was at DreamWorks, but I was too shy to share my work and get it out there, and I really dove into it when I went to Lightstorm and learned from John Landau and James Cameron and worked on development there.
Where are you from, and where did you go to school and that?
Oh, okay. I'm from California, and I went to undergrad at New Mexico State University in Gradswood at AU.
How did you get started? Did you just walk into James Cameron's office one day?
No. I didn't do that, no. I actually was working for Jeffrey Katzenberg, and I was his number 2 person. So in the DC world, that's, I guess, a deputy level. And while I was at DreamWorks, I was helping Jeffrey with, at the time it was Gladiator, Shrek, several other projects that were in the mix in development, and got recruited from DreamWorks over to Lightstorm, and that's how I ended up working at Lightstorm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And next we have Jane. Come on up. Tell us how you got started.
Well, ever since I was a little kid, I could draw. So I think for my whole life, I've always been telling stories, but there's like 2 parts of my life. There's the first part was the arts, which included art, making art, dance, and theater. So my real first passion was set design. That's how I kind of got into theater management with Sir Rudolph Bing. Went to Parsons School of Design because they had a stage set class. but I realized that I had already done a lot of stuff already, so I took illustration, and it was a good thing I did, because I was told by 2 male set designers, there are no women set designers. It's too long a story to go in because I only have 5 minutes, but I did get a job as a set designer and a costume designer, and it was the year that New York City went bankrupt, so before I even got my first paycheck, I had no job. So I went like this, and I took the graphic design route, and worked as a freelancer all over the place. I worked for Exxon, I worked for Mobile, I did political illustration for the New York Times. I'm one of those people that I've always been a freelance person, and kind of like, you know, where's the money and where can I make it, if I can make any. So what happened was, because I was an illustrator back in the olden days, illustration was the way because publications were the way stories were told. Eventually what happened was film became more of the vehicle for that. And if I had had $25,000 20 years ago, I probably would have gone to film school. But I didn't have that. So I started writing, and I'm dyslexic, so it must be pretty, you know, compelling, and, you know, for someone like me who can't spell, to write, I figured, what the heck, so what if it's not spelled right? I don't care. I had to tell my stories. So I started writing. I wrote 2 novels where I got rejection calls, and there were editors calling me saying, you know, I really love your book, but we're just not buying this now. So instead of writing 400 pages, I realized that screenwriting was a way for me to combine everything, all my passions, art, music, everything. So I started writing screenplays.
Okay, thank you. Tell us how you got started and a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I grew up in Georgia, and I went to Wesleyan University undergraduate, where I did, okay, this is a little complicated, a joint major in psychology and sociology and a double major in studio arts. My mother was an artist. And so after I graduated, I had to decide if I wanted to, this is a very odd choice I'd set up in my head, if I wanted to go get a PhD or an MFA. Not really sure where those options came from, but that's what I thought. I need to pick between these 2 things, and everybody told me an MFA was totally useless. Sorry for those of you who have an MFA. That's what I was told. And so I went to get a PhD in sociology at Brown University. Now it turned out that Rhode Island School of Design was down the street. And so when I decided to get the PhD, I promised myself I would keep my hand in art. At that time I was doing photography and ceramic sculpture. I'd also been a dancer my whole life, so I was very much involved in the arts, and so I started taking classes at RISD down the street and taking film classes, and much to the chagrin of my sociology department, I started making films. So I was doing a lot of field work in Brazil, and then in California, and I made my first short documentary film about, this is weird for Americans, but not weird for Brazilians, people displaced by large hydroelectric dams. Because 90% of their energy is hydro. They build these huge dams, which some of you have heard about in China now, displacing thousands and thousands of people. And so I went into these communities, worked with these people, and made this, my first short film. I made another film while I was a graduate student, a documentary film about a woman who lived in a cancer cluster in Long Island who had gotten breast cancer, and followed her through her journey of trying to understand how she'd gotten breast cancer. Are you raising your hand? No, okay. And so, you know, I started going very much down this documentary film road, and I guess I'll pause there because that's just how I started, but I guess we'll come back to it.
So Maureen Sappey, come on up and tell us how you got started. And something about yourself.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. You don't know yet.
I I fell into what I'm doing today. I am working with some production companies on books that I've written. But I am a novelist. I'm not a screenplay writer. My education was undergraduate and graduate colleges in Maryland. But my real education came from my family. My mother was Australian. And when I was 10 years old, my family moved to Australia, and I was there for a few years. And there were 11 kids in the family. My dad took us by ship. And in getting to Australia, we went halfway around the world, came back to the other half. And those years were vital to myself as a writer. I'm a very visual writer, and that's why I think my books, I have 2 books that are have been optioned for film. And I think it's just the way I write, it just translates easily into film. I am working, I'm now producer on,
We're gonna go into that now.
okay.
Yeah, so the second question I'm gonna ask the panelists is, what are you working on now? What are your current projects? So Monica, tell us something about those. And, and tell us something about Mr. Cameron too. He's obviously very famous. How would you like to work with him?
Okay. Jim is what we call him.
Oh, Jim.
Imagine that.
I really like him. I think he's fantastic. He's was a very strong mentor in my life, as well as John Lando. Worked really hard, and I was never treated differently because I have a safe girl, so I'm a woman. At Lightstorm, what am I working on now?
Yeah, what projects?
Thrown off with Jim. The project I have a project right now that I'm very excited about. It's about a female Border Patrol agent, which the Border Patrol and you know, it's a man's world basically. And so I actually developed that while I was working at Lightstorm, and I went in, and every Monday we had to have pitch meetings. New ideas meetings where we'd sit around the table, and every week we would come in and give our idea for the next movie. So there were a lot that I was turned down on, and so rejection is a huge thing in this industry. You just have to get thick skin and say, okay, next, and file your idea away because it may work for later on down the road. So in my new ideas meeting, I pitched him stuff, and he hated it, and as did the rest of the room. Some of it I agreed with, but then the next week I went out, and I thought, well, okay, what's going on? Where's the strong area where women work? And so being in California, I went down to the border, Border Patrol let us in, and went down and I spent 3 days out in the field with Border Patrol in Chula Vista along the Tijuana border. And while I was out there, I discovered that only, at the time, 6% were female agents. And I thought, oh, okay, Terminator, Linda Hamilton, here we go. So I went back to Lightstorm and I pitched the idea and they liked it. And I came out to DC to do some research, and while I was out here I met my husband. He's not Border Patrol. And that is how I transitioned from LA, Hollywood, to DC, and I produced at Discovery and did some other things. So worked at Discovery, went to an international production company where I worked with filmmakers pretty much all around the world, in Cairo, and Dubai, and Lebanon, and Thailand, different places. And the number one thing that I found with working from A-list talent to filmmakers who are living in third world countries is story. So it doesn't matter if they're, you know, huge and famous to someone who's just starting out, you know, story is paramount to your process. And being able to craft a story and to have someone say, I don't like it, that's a horrible idea. You just say, okay, great, it's my idea, I'm going to file it away and I'll use it again. Or you take what the suggestions that they give you and you keep moving forward. So that job where I was traveling around working with different filmmakers, I decided what I really wanted to do was go back to my passion of writing. I picked up that old script that I had, I dusted it off, and right now I'm currently working with the producer who does Batman, and that project hopefully is gonna start filming in March. about the female Border Patrol agents. So that's what I'm working on.
How do you actually write a screenplay? Is there a certain, do you use software? I mean, I know when the librettists were here, the women songwriters, they had software.
Yes. Yeah, so there's different kinds of software to use. I love Final Draft. It's industry standard. There's other formats, Movie Magic, Celtics. I don't like those. And if you send your script out to somebody, you would send it in a PDF, but if they want to work with it, it's going to need to be Final Draft. So yeah, that's what we use.
Thank you. And Jane Barbara, tell us about some of your current projects that you're working on.
5 minutes. Okay, what's interesting is, okay, Jim, let's call him Jim, Sir Rudolph Bing was called Sir. Sir Rudolph Bing. My current projects are many, but the one that I'm currently working on in terms of like location scouting, next week I'm going to be casting, is a short comedy film called Lobster Fra Diavolo, the movie. And has to do Lobster Fra Diavolo, the movie. So it has to do with this Italian Feast of the Seven Fishes. If anybody knows about the big Italian fish dinner on Christmas Eve, it takes place that night. So I've been working on that for a year. I've raised about $20,000. I'm hoping for another $20,000 from a matching grant, and waiting with bated breath to get this email. But it does, you know, the thing is, if you're a screenwriter, you have to really think about, you got to do it yourself, okay? So it's not just the writing, you've got to go beyond that little world in the corner of your room. It's really about creating a group of people who are going to collaborate on this project. So through my other project, Suspicious Density, short drama that I wrote about breast cancer, I met my producing partner, Oriana Opici. And so she's in New York, so we are now co-producing this. And it really helps to have somebody else, you know, because there's so much work you have to do in terms of raising money. Writing it is the easy thing, okay? Producing, getting the money, I mean, how long have you been? A couple of years. Couple of years. I mean, well, films, it takes some films like 12 years to get funding. And so you have got to be absolutely passionate, or crazy. So I have to give a shout out to WIF. When I moved to Washington, D.C., my friends and I, we were going to do a wedding business together, and so I really joined WIF as a businesswoman, but I was also like writing, you know, it's secretly, because I really didn't think anything was going to happen. So I have to give kudos to WIF, because if it wasn't for WIF, I wouldn't be in that ship.
So I'm going to pick up a little bit where I left off and highlight this theme that I'm seeing emerging here, which is writing in secret, which I didn't realize was going to be a characteristic of what we've all done. So I finished my PhD and I did a postdoc at the University of Pennsylvania, and kind of in secret took this screenwriting class as a way to help my documentary filmmaking. And my screenwriter professor he was from LA, he was commuting every week from LA, which I thought was insane, but he was great, he was fabulous, and he said to me, "This is going to change your life." And I said, "Yeah, right, that's me, he's kind of pompous, he's from LA." But he was right, he was actually right. And he changed my life in a way I didn't expect, which was I started writing fiction screenplays, and so this was 7 years ago. So I continued my documentary work. I made 2 more films of my own, and then I worked on this project that was mentioned. It's called Years of Living Dangerously, which, how many of you have heard of it? It's a TV series on Showtime. Jim Cameron is one of the executive producers, along with Jerry Weintraub and a lot of other famous people. And for that, I produced 2 stories. There are like 18 or 19 stories across 9 hours. One with Matt Damon and one with Michael C. Hall. We have these celebrity correspondents in each story. And we actually were not just Emmy nominated, we just won the Emmy for Best Documentary Series. But as I've been working on documentary and being a professor full-time, I have kind of on the side been writing screenplays, which I think is kind of insane, but is really, I just fell in love with it when I did it for the first time, and have been in DC here for 5 years and met Monica, who's been just like so instrumental in supporting me in my screenwriting process. And so what I'm working on now is it's a project I worked on in a workshop that Monica put together, which, so basically I did things in reverse, which I keep doing. So I wrote a feature-length script, and then I said, oh, wait a minute, I have to write a short so I can raise the money to make this feature. And so I wrote a short, which I'm just in the final stages of finishing. It's called A Good Egg. It's about a woman who is about to turn 40, who's kind of struggling with, like, how far does she have to push herself to find out if she can have a family, in a lot of different ways. And so my producing partners and I are going to produce this short in the first half of October in New York. We've just cast our lead actor, but I'm not going to tell you who it is. So I'm working on that, and then I'm also, I think probably all of us who are writers work on like 16 projects at once. So I have a number of other things in development, including the other one that I'm most psyched about that you've heard about is a shock to me. It's a sci-fi time travel movie about a woman who's kind of obsessed with going back in time. So I'll stop there.
Maureen?
I'm probably the only one who doesn't keep it a secret. I am a writer full-time. I've written 8 books. 3 of them have been looked at by producers. I have one right now, Letters from Vinnie. It's about the Civil War. And it is, down the road it's going to be a mini-series, but right now they're doing a documentary. The documentary, one of the producers is Jay Miracle. He just won an Oscar for 20 Feet from Stardom. Great guy. He put me on the production team, and I'm not sure why. I have no background, but what they have me doing is a lot of writing and finding them speakers and helping with the raising of funds, which really something down the road. That documentary is going to premiere in DC in 2016 in April. It's about Vinnie Ream. The other book is about Paul Revere, and I'm not really at liberty to talk about that. The third one, a couple years ago, was kind of funny. Mel Gibson had a manuscript, a book I wrote about the Irish Rebellion, and he was going to, I guess he had the Patriot, Braveheart, and then the Irish, but he did The Passion, and he returned it to me. He said he gave up on film, and I heard he's back now, so I don't know what's going to happen with that. But filmmaking for me it's a very strange world that you are in. It's very hard for me to decipher it. The book industry is very different from the film industry. You know, I look at the stats. There's 250,000 books that are published worldwide every year. In America, there were only 270 films that were released. I mean, it's amazing. And I think it's just a very difficult field that you are in. I admire you. I would never write a screenplay. Because, now, the reason I wouldn't is because I am because of my background, I told you, living in Ireland and Australia and having an English mother, an Australian mother, my writing is very formal. It's very old worldish sounding, you know, so it fits what I write. I write historical fiction. I have no contemporary voice. I haven't seen a lot of TV shows or a lot of movies. I mean, I'm really a dinosaur. But what I do is, I write books that producers like. And I think it's just because I tend to write visually. And that's it, luck, I guess.
Okay, Maureen, Maureen, how do you, I mean, you don't just call up Mel Gibson and say, hey Mel, how's it going? How would you like to look at my book? I mean,
Actually, I do.
how do you, tell us, how do you get your book before someone like Mel Gibson? How do you
I'll
do it?
tell you something, I believe that to be successful in the arts, you have to break rules. I'll give you an example. One of my books, Letters from Vinny, is a book written in the epistolary form, which is letters. And the most famous publisher in publishing at that time had quit a huge house, shocked the world, and he opened a new little house. So one of the rules in publishing is you never call the publisher. I did. And I called him, he picked up the phone, I told him I had a book, Civil War. He goes, I hate historical fiction. I said, no, you're going to like this one. This one is written in the epistolary form. He says, it's never been done successfully. I said, I did it. I know I did. So I am arguing on the phone with this man. I had nothing to lose. Just nothing to lose, right? So I'm arguing. So finally he says, all right, send it to me. I'm going to reject it. So most people would say, I'm not wasting the postage. I sent it to him. And about a few months later he called me. He said, I have good news, I have bad news. I said, okay, good news. He said, well, you did it. You wrote a novel in epistolary form. And he said, so he talked to me and I watched the clock an hour and 15 minutes about all the good stuff. So I said, okay, Mr. Roxburgh, what's the bad news? He said, I'm not going to publish it. So I said, well, why not? He said, because it's about Lincoln. Too many books about Lincoln. And so I said, well, I can write a new ending. He says, no, you can't. I started arguing with him. And then a year later, he did buy it. And then it took 2 more years to get it out. See, publishing is, and I want to tell you something. I'm going to tell you this. 3% of writers can live on their writing. That book, I'm not bragging, I'm just going to tell you the facts. Hardback, softback, documentary, miniseries, Braille, New York Times recommended, all sorts of awards. My total income from that book, $5,000. So, when you hear about writers making a ton of money, you have to do what I have to do. You have to love it. You just have to love it. It's hard, right?
Oh, did you have a lawyer? I mean,
Yes.
I'm my lawyer right now. I have to be a lawyer, but I was just wondering, how did you only end up with $5,000?
That's typical.
Did you have a lawyer the whole time? Negotiating for you?
Typical.
All right. Now we're going to go through with another question that I sort of borrowed from the National Book Festival. They had a panel on screenwriters. And the question is, I think Maureen kind of already went into this a little bit. How is writing a novel different from a screenplay? Or how is writing a screenplay different from any other form of writing? Monica, do you want to talk about that? You've had some experience in all those venues, I think?
Well, I don't write novels.
Right, but I mean, in the screenwriting experience.
In the screenwriting world, I always say this to people and there's several people in here that I've worked with before and that I know. In the screenwriting world, the writer is pretty much bottom rung. The screenwriter is. When you write a script, just from the scene header, the very scene header, interior, conference room, press club, day. So you get the idea of where we are, how many people are in here, is not up really to the writer. You say a packed conference room. Well, it would depend on the budget, on how big this room is. It could be a conference room, could have 6 people, or it could have 600 people in a big room. So really, writing as far as visual, you need to get the essence of what it is, but it's also allowing for the casting people, the set designers, the director, the producer, your budget, the financiers. There's a whole bunch of people that have a say in what you're writing. So the very first thing you do as a screenwriter is to say, okay, well, I have this awesome idea that I'm going to do. I'm going to write it as best as I can, and I'm going to release it to the universe, and I'm going to let everyone put their input in it and go with it. And that's the reality of it. I think screenwriting is a lot of fun, and one of the things that I like to do being here in DC is making the bridge from DC to LA. So I work with a lot of production companies in LA for very big movies that you all maybe are familiar with, and I'll put together a cybersecurity person with a producer in LA, and so either they're a technical consultant on it or they'll write and do it. And so that's a lot of the, it's very, as Jane said and Sabrina said, it's a very collaborative process. And you have to let go and sort of say yes and go with it. And stay true to yourself as an artist, but really learning your craft. And because a producer or financer looking at your script from page 1, they can tell if you know how to write. You don't need to get 40 pages into it. They can look at the very first page and see if it's clean and if it's, I compare it a little bit to poetry. If you write a haiku, it has to be a certain way. Screenwriting, there's a very specific standard of how you write screenplays. So that's that.
Want to tell us about how how does screenwriting differ from other types of writing?
Well, Monica pretty much, the only thing I would add to that is the difference between when you're writing in a novel a character, you're writing everything. You're writing what they're thinking, what they're wearing, the whole, what they're looking at, all of that. In screenwriting, you're not in their head. Everything has to be up on the screen. So if they're having a certain kind of feeling, you're not saying she thought, there's no bubble over their head. It's got to be indicated from the action of what is happening on the screen. So, like Monica said, it's like haiku. It's it's not easy, it's very difficult and especially people who adapt novels, I don't know how they do it. I mean, that is like really an art form. To be able to take something that is, 400 pages or whatever, and then make it so that this group of people, art director, producers, set prop people, I mean all the gaffers, everybody, to be able to all have that same vision. There's also, from the artist's point of view, there's also the storyboard artist. A lot of films are just storyboarded. I mean, like, all animation obviously is storyboarded, but a lot of movies have a storyboard, so it's kind of like that comic, and it's what's on the screen. It's not what's in somebody's head, it's like what is happening on the screen. It's a different mindset for your writing and how you're processing the information.
So I guess I can speak mainly to the difference between writing nonfiction and writing fiction, both in terms of books as well as documentaries. So I've written 2 books, one of which is a very straight academic book, another of which is a kind of a crossover book, also about environmental causes of breast cancer that went with the film that I directed called No Family History. So I guess a few things I've learned okay, so first, for whatever kind of project you're doing, the research behind it is critical. If you haven't done the research, you don't have anything. You don't know what you're writing about, you don't know who you're writing about, you don't know where you're writing, what's the context, because you have to imagine, and I'm talking about fiction, screenwriting now, if you're writing a fiction script, screenplay, you have to have that whole world in your head, right? You're putting the reader, the audience in a world, and so you really have to know what you're talking about, and that's also true, obviously, of nonfiction. One thing that I think is not always true of nonfiction that's 100% true of fiction, and Monica's already touched on this, is the importance of character. So, and in fact, Jane has also touched on this, in screenwriting, I mean, 90% of it is about character. If you're writing a screen where your top priority isn't about character, your scene sucks. Like people watch movies because they care about a character. They don't watch them because they care about a topic or a time period or I mean, this is my opinion. This is all my opinion. But you really have to put yourself in that character. Know who that person is, what they want the most in the world, what they hate the most, you know, all of this. And so I think nonfiction isn't always like this, but fiction screenwriting is always like this. I feel like there was one other thing I was going to say, but I forgot it. So maybe I'll remember next time.
Now we have about 10 minutes left, 8 minutes, and I'll take any questions. I'll repeat them, questions from the audience. Pardon? Well, you had already addressed that topic in your earlier remarks. That was the gravamen of your yes, ma'am. Could you stand up so everybody can hear and see?
I'm interested in when a book, a novel, has been requested by a producer and a synopsis is requested. For people who write books, a synopsis means one thing. What is it in the movie industry, page-wise, what are you looking for from that synopsis?
Okay, question. What is a synopsis in movie lingo? What is that? Do you want to take that, Monica?
Yes. A synopsis basically is the Cliff Notes version of your script. The reason why they want that is so that they can quickly look at it and decide if it will resonate with whatever audience they're trying to get it out. So a synopsis is maybe, I've seen them where there's 2 pages or 10 pages of it. There's no rules with what it is. Sort of depends on the project and the parameters of the producer. So usually it's just a short story of what the movie's about. So like Mr. and Mrs. Smith, if you're right, you know, that maybe there's all kinds of stuff going on. There's espionage stuff, they're living together, they don't know what each other does. So the entire synopsis is Mr. Smith does this, Mrs. Smith, and it's narrowed down to their interaction only, not the entire movie of his buddy and you know, the 3 women that she works with. It's just their inner conflict, and it's basically the relationship of this married couple we meet them when they're in marriage counseling. And so that's basically what it is, a very boiled down version of your project, of the book. So,
Okay. Next questions? Anybody else? Yes, Patricia.
No, Elizabeth.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Could you sit next to us? I'm sorry.
The production of your ideas here is fantastic. What do you do to protect your ideas from somebody else?
You cannot copyright an idea, or phrase, or a word.
Yes.
You cannot copyright a title. You can copyright the expression of your art in a fixable form.
Do you all do that?
yes,
You do.
absolutely. Yeah.
You do. Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering, as much as we're talking about writing in secret, how have you kind of disciplined your day? When do you write? When do you make time? Is it setting aside an hour? Is it writing while the pizza's in the oven? Because everyone seems to have this trick of getting the time in.
I feel very strongly about this.
Let me repeat the question. What is your writing discipline? Writing is a very disciplined process. And what is your particular discipline?
I mean, so when
Can you come on up to the podium?
Oh, sure. So I wrote my master's thesis, which was like 80 pages, and then I was going to write my dissertation, so this was my first long project, and I skimmed this book called How to Write Your Dissertation, and the one thing I remember from that book was write every day, at the same time, every day. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm not a morning person, I'll just get up and I'll just do it in the morning. And that was 15 years ago, and not all weekends, but I write every morning. I don't care what I write. It could be an article, it could be a screenplay, it could be, it's just the practice and making the space. And now I kind of can't not write, like I have to write in the morning, or I feel like I'm not home, even if I'm traveling, I feel like I've missed something. And to me, knowing you have that space and making that space for yourself is what allows the ideas to come through. Otherwise, you kind of get jammed up. But I think it's critical, like find a time that works for you. Maybe it's not the morning, maybe it's right before you go to bed, and just do it, even if it's a half an hour. But like just to a window of time that you have, as many days a week as you can do it, just to kind of get the wheels turning.
Can I add something that I think is pretty important? I've taught writing for over 30 years and everywhere, colleges, conferences, had hundreds and hundreds of students. And the majority of them never finish anything. So I've done a lot of research about this. It's a very important thing. If you want to succeed in the arts, you have to be disciplined. You have to look at it as a job. My husband, I have 4 kids, 6 grandchildren, makes me a workaholic. I'll work from 6 in the morning until sometimes 10 o'clock at night every day. And I'm trying to get that reduced, but I work all the time. Now I enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, it becomes labor. It becomes very hard. So if you love what you're doing, you're going to want to sit down and write. But if you find that you can't finish something, what you do is you just schedule yourself just like a job, and I think it'll work for you. Okay?
I have just one last question to ask the panel. It's from the Festival of the Book. And it was, a screenplay is like a jigsaw puzzle, a 2-dimensional rectangle. You write for that frame. Could you talk about that? Do you agree with that?
Describe the screen?
Yeah. Yeah. Could you write for that? Also, tell us a Jim story.
Okay. Actually, can we hear Catherine's story? She's actually much more interesting.
Sure. So, Jim, he's very focused in what he's working on, and there was one day I was sitting at my desk doing stuff, and he was late for a meeting, and he was wearing a black shirt, black pants, and a motorcycle helmet, and was late for the meeting and came running in, and he was like, "Hey," and I was kind of looking at him, but he still had his helmet on because he was so focused on the project and on the meeting, and so that's
All right.
I guess. No, I really like him, and everyone at Lightstorm, and happy that I have a relationship with them. But what was the other question that the frame? The frame?
Yeah, the frame.
Sabrina talked about it a little bit, where research is paramount to your project. If you're going to write about being, there's a scene, if there's a movie about farming, or if you're going to write about sailing across the ocean, if you're going to write about a specific historical time, have to do the research. I mean, Sabrina mentioned being very structured with the time. I write every single day. I'll spend maybe one day, I'll research, and I'll spend all day researching whatever it is, the topic of what I'm working on, because there's nothing more insulting to the viewer watching that box, either on your tablet, the TV, or the movie theater, and there's some element that you're watching, and it's your field, you're a camera operator. There's nothing more irritating if you see extras in a movie and there's a lens cover, and there, and someone missed that, that is something that is insulting to your audience. And it's insulting to the world of your story. You're not being true to the character that you're writing about, and that's something I work with all the time with writers, and with my stuff and with the writers in town. Can I say one more thing about WIF? So I'm on the board of WIF, and I've been working with screenwriters for several years here, and I'm very excited about their projects. And there's several people in this room right now that are in the Spotlight on Screenwriters catalog that's going out to a lot of producers and financiers that are going to look at this catalog. And the reason why I wanted to do this was because I know that the talent in town, DC, Virginia, Maryland, is very strong, and that the writers that I know in LA are just as talented. The problem is that they don't have that connection. And so through WIF, what we're doing is we're bridging the talent that is here in the DC area to people in Hollywood who are decision makers, who will read the synopsis and request a script. And so can I just point out some of the people that are in there?
Absolutely.
So we have Jane and Sabrina and Linda He's in the back.
Did you say the last name?
Linda Robbins in the back.
Okay.
Who else is in here? Faith. Well,
I'm from
Faith is a
Wisconsin.
writer. She's a screenwriter too. Wendra Williams, and there's someone, and Jamie in the back. So we're gonna have around 40 scripts in this catalog, and I'm very excited about it because these are projects that I am pretty positive that you will see them. Not all of them, but I'm sure you will see some of them on that box. Screen.
I think there's one more question. Yes, ma'am. Please stand up so we can.
So I had a question more about development, because I know you're talking about working in development. I'm interested in working in development at some point, so I was wondering, how do you get a job in development, and what are people looking for when they're hiring someone? Like, what kind of experiences can I work on now to be like a good character?
Yeah, whoever wants to take it. Monica, if you want to stand up so let them give it to you.
So her question, if you didn't hear in the back, is working in development. So if you're working in development, you can start locally with PBS, Discovery, Smithsonian, National Geographic, and there's a bunch of other little companies that basically sell their projects to the distributors, which is Discovery, and start locally with that. So development basically is having a crazy imagination that you have an idea for a story in nonfiction or in fiction. Okay, so basically working in development is finding experts like what I do and merging them with your idea. So you're in DC, you're probably an expert in the area of what happens here. So if you were working on a White House story, then you would go and you would find people that have worked in the White House, find people who worked across the street from the White House. It's basically, in the DC world, you're basically a security background person, if you look at it that way. You're building the story of someone's life or a character's life. But to get started in it, I think starting locally with the different production companies, and I'm happy to make introductions for you. So you can just sort of do that.
You know, and there are more film festivals in Washington DC.
Could you stand up, please, because otherwise it doesn't get on the video. You're the women in.
I try not to be on the
Come on, the other is right, women in film and video.
Sorry. The other thing is, we live in an incredibly rich media environment. There are close to 85 film festivals in the Washington DC immediate region. So you have no excuse not to see work. And that's one of the best things you can do, is just immerse yourself in what else is out there, what are the things you like, what's the storytelling you like, who did a good job of character. And then the same thing, there are so many things like Women in Film and the Writers Center and things like that. Get involved with those projects where you can see other people's work and start to understand how they're crafting a story that you want to copy. You know, what are those skills that you can bring forward? And we live actually in a community that is more open to that sharing of information and ideas than probably a lot of others, because everybody here isn't expecting to be discovered for their work. So everybody can be much more generous in how they're sharing with you for your success. So take advantage of those collaborations that exist here. And I think Sabrina is a perfect example. They exist across disciplines. So yeah, she's got a day job, and it doesn't necessarily involve writing, and it shouldn't involve fiction because of what she teaches. Please,
Should not include fiction, that's for sure.
But there's a vibrant enough place here that she can make space for the fictional part too, and can bring those other resources, and can really bring the strength of what her academic environment is, and that skill and discipline to it as well. So you're actually in a great place to start to see what a lot of other people are doing. And then because so many of, and Monica mentioned several of them, those producing entities are here. And then it's even broader than that, because it's the NGOs are producing media, the news media that's being produced here, the
Government agency.
God, USDA, the Department of Agriculture has a media department. Producing media all the time. I mean, there are people that do agriculture media all the time. Which is very interesting. Yeah, I mean, just go to any of them. And most of those, because they're government agencies and you're paying for them, at some point the work has to get out to the public, or they have to present a program on it. So, you know, there's a very good chance you can go to a State Department program and meet that person who's living the life you wanted to write about, but you didn't have some of those details, and how do you find them? Or Smithsonian Residence Associates, or whatever it is, you're actually in just such an incredibly creative place to find those things. And it really is, ultimately, you're gonna have to sell what you're bringing to that process, and you're gonna need as broad a background as possible, because you never know what story is coming across your desk. Today you're gonna have to be a security expert, tomorrow you're gonna have to be a HIV expert, and the next day you're gonna have to be a security HIV expert. So, take advantage of, well, I'm sure there's something related. Besides condoms, I mean, there's that part of it, and then there are but how do you take advantage of the resources that are here? And you can be a spy while you're doing it. No one has to know it's because you're writing a story. You can just be this incredibly curious person who's at a lot of things, and all you're doing the whole time is building this story idea, and then it's going to be on that framed screen, and people are going to just be like, where did that come from? And so take advantage of where you are to build those connections and pieces, and as for people here. And Script DC, yeah, I mean, that's coming up in November. It's November 14th through 16th. You can't buy a ticket to New York or LA for what this costs, and it's 2.5 days. And it's everything from working with leaders in their field, to meeting people in this neighborhood that you can collaborate with, to also making pitches and having them critiqued. So you're not trying to sell your idea, but you're pitching your idea so you get a critique on that, so when you are ready to sell it, you're that much further ahead than your competition. And the same thing, on Sunday, first 5 pages of scripts are read by local actors, and you get a critique on those first 5 pages. And as Monica said, people are making their decision in the first 3 pages. And a bunch of us have just read a heck of a lot of scripts lately, and we were all required to read to the end of them, and we loved reading to the end of every one of them, I know. But in the first 4 pages whether it's going to be a pleasurable read or you need another glass of wine.
Everybody put on your shades, put your shades back on. So this is, we're concluding our meeting. Thank you so much for coming. If anybody wants to join, the memberships are $1. You can fill out this, and we'd love to have you as a member. And anybody wants to make a contribution for lunch, that'd be great. But thank you very much for coming. We're very, very happy.